Servus Männer, it's Red Bull Germany again. Today I read on the website spiegel.de, that is the online presence of the leftist newspaper outlet, or it's a weekly newspaper, Der Spiegel in Germany. And in that article I read that a labor union group in Brazil is now trying to sue Mr. Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil, at the International Court in Den Haag. And they say that he committed crimes against humanity when he mishandles the current pandemic like he does. And just for some perspective here, Den Haag, this is where really, really serious war criminals are put on trial, for example, okay? And they are really trying to, put him on trial there according to international law, crimes against humanity, which is normally like really nasty stuff that happens during conflict situations. Yeah, and they say he must stand trial there and must be treated basically like a war criminal. Okay. Yeah. And of course, you can take the death toll, the mortality, and treat that now as some kind of massacre. But is that really what happens? I mean, yes, Brazil is a very large country. And of course, their health system is maybe not as good as in a first world country. And yeah, I would probably have done some things differently. I'm not a fan of how Mr. Bolsonaro is dealing with the situation there, no doubt. I mean, if you have watched my videos on the situation in Germany and in Europe, you know that. I'm also no fan of forced lockdowns and yeah, basically shutting down businesses and the industry. That is wrong. But there must be a healthy middle ground there, because I do believe that this pandemic is real. However, what happens now here in Brazil is ridiculous. Yeah, you cannot just put a leader on trial as if he was a major criminal that committed atrocities, just because he tries to find a compromise like all the other leaders between the demands of the economy, the industry, and the health situation. Remember, if people lose their job, if the industry goes into a downward spiral, that also costs life. There is also a death toll attached to that, and it's not just from depressed people who lost their job. There are direct and indirect causes, but that number should also not be neglected. And the other thing I really want to comment on is, first of all, I want to say that even the church, the Catholic Church, they, according to the article at least, they are also of that opinion, that the president is dealing with the situation in a really bad way, and he's a horrible president, and they really become very political here. And the way I grew up in Europe with the the political situation and the church, they were never that clearly speaking out in favor of any politician. They tried to, unless it was about things that like the protection of unborn life or something. Yeah, they had a clear opinion there. But healthcare, politics, this is nothing that normally the church commented on. And bear in mind, more so than in Germany, I think in Brazil, the Catholic, I mean, we're not in the 50s anymore, but still, I think in Brazil, the Catholic Church still has some authority and can really influence a lot of people and a lot of voters. And I find this highly questionable that the church is positioning itself that clearly and in that partisan manner. That is not how the church should act here. That is absolutely indefensible and disgusting, I think. Okay, then the next big thing I want to talk about is what is not being talked about in the media, and that is Sweden, for example, of course. So, what has Bolsonaro done any differently from the feminist government of Sweden? They didn't have lockdowns. They played it down. They said there is no problem, move along, nothing to see here. They ignored it. They were priding themselves of how much better they are compared to all the neighboring countries, that their pubs are still open and that everybody is still able to walk around without masks, and they're so hip and they're so cool, and we're Swedish people. We don't need rules because we trust in the superiority of our people, and they would from their own accord, from their own rational understanding, would comply with these things automatically. Of course, they didn't. And actually, if you look at the official numbers, you see that the mortality per capita in Sweden is much higher than in Brazil. Of course, Sweden is a tiny country compared to Brazil. This is why the absolute numbers are not as big, but that should not be the measuring stick. That should not be the criterion by which you evaluate the performance of a government or the policies that they enact. Of course, not every country is the same, but given the fact that Sweden is really a rich, very rich first world country, and Brazil is really not. They have slums there, they have a lot of poverty there, their medical system, at least for everybody. Maybe the rich people have a really good medical system in Brazil, probably, but I think the masses, they don't have access to medicine that can be compared to that in Sweden, I think. And yes, I know Sweden. By the way, I mean, if you want to know the real Sweden behind the socialist utopia cliche, I suggest to you. I don't think I have to, because he is an excellent YouTuber with a really big channel. But Angry Foreigner, I really like this guy. Um, he is, I think, a refugee from Bosnia Herzegovina, so he's a Bosniak, if I'm informed correctly, and he fled. I think, yeah, in the 90s during the Balkan conflict, he fled to Sweden, and he is a refugee immigrant. And yeah, he kind of talks about Sweden and what he thinks about it. And especially when it comes to this pandemic situation, he made a couple of really informative, really great videos, very critical videos about Sweden and how they are handling the situation. But nobody is accusing them and trying to, put the feminist government of Sweden in front of the international court at Den Haag for crimes against humanity. And they actually did very nasty things, especially with the elderly people there. Um, that caused, as I said, I mean, the mortality relative, per capita is way higher in Sweden than in Brazil. And that even though they are a rich first world country that can afford the best medical care, while the same cannot be said, of course, for Brazil. All right. So, yeah, I'm Mr. Obvious again. I'm pointing out these different standards for different groups and different people, um, hypocrisy. You see it everywhere. Of course, I cannot call out everything I see, but in this case, I thought I have to say something because I didn't study the policies and the measures of both countries in detail. I can just say that from what I read about it, it doesn't sound too dissimilar. It doesn't sound like Sweden took it seriously, and it didn't sound like Brazil takes it seriously. And yes, both have really high mortality numbers, but in Sweden it's even higher. That's my point. And once again, you see this pattern everywhere. Bolsonaro stands for the old man. Dare I say white man? I don't know if you want to call him a white man, probably, yeah. But uh, they don't get away with things. According, in opposition or counter to what the mainstream narrative wants to tell you. They say, oh, there is this male privilege and they get away with everything. The truth is that women get away with a lot of stuff, yeah? I mean, Angela Merkel, for example, she gets away with stuff that I think um, if she was a chancellor, a male chancellor, I mean, she would have had to step down 5 to 10 times already during her reign. And in Sweden, I mean, yeah, you can tell me, oh, that's whataboutism. We're not talking about Sweden. We're talking about Brazil now. Yeah, but seriously, what is the difference? What did they do differently? Why are they not criticized by all the media in all the world? And why are they not put, in front of a court like they want to do with President Bolsonaro now? Um, I think because they're socialists, because they're commies, because they're feminists, because they're women. This is why they get away with stuff. And this is why nobody talks about it. And this is why the facts, i.e., the much larger mortality, doesn't really count. Facts and numbers doesn't matter. Who cares? We have a narrative. Bolsonaro bad, Sweden brave and good. They're so brave and stunning. How they dealt with that situation in such a cool and way. I mean, they didn't overreact. That's the virtue of a woman. She is the moderate. She goes the middle path. She doesn't overreact. That's so great, stunning and brave, and people die. And there are articles actually you can read that countries that are led by women are getting through this pandemic much better than countries that are led by men. And when I read this headline, I also asked myself, what about Sweden? Sweden has a feminist government, and they are, if you adopt the numerical criteria that they do in the mainstream, I mean, with all these official numbers, Sweden looks way worse than any country in Europe, or worse than Brazil, worse than a lot of countries that are led by men, that the media actually presents as negative examples. So, once again, numbers don't count, facts don't count, just the narrative. All right, so let's see if this is just a big headline, a scandalous newspaper article that should fill the void of the summer months, or if something really comes out of the story, and if Mr. Bolsonaro really is wanted then by international police force or something, or there is a search warrant or whatever, or they try to find him and try to make him appear in court in Den Haag. Yeah, let's see. But I have my doubts. Maybe they just planned that, and maybe this is all just a big media campaign to show the people of Brazil that they are losing some kind of reputation abroad. That this is also a tactic that's employed a lot. You are making some wind in other countries, and then your politicians in the opposition domestically can say, oh, look, our leader is so bad. All the other countries, they're laughing about us, or they're angry at us, or they don't take us seriously, or they don't feel good about what he's doing. We're losing our credibility. We're losing our good relations with other countries. This is hurting us. This is hurting our economy. But this is all manufactured. This is all manufactured by the media and by globalists. And they have the power to spin these stories and to create these stories out of nothing. And then you can use that in domestically during a campaign, for example, or just, to pressure the government and say, oh, look, you are hurting our country with your misguided policies, when in fact that's not at all true. That's just what some foreign media write about that government, and they are controlled by the same globalists that the opposition in that country, for example, might be controlled by. All right, that's all I have to say about this, I guess, and let's see what happens there. I check you guys out. Oh God, I check you guys out later. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. Servus, Kameraden.